Okay, we are live, episode 12 of the Long Toss here on the Walkoff. Happy Easter to
Easter
everyone.
Sunday.
Let's start with that. Happy Sunday, happy whatever it is you celebrate. I don't mean Easter in a religious sense, I just mean it in the chocolate bunny sense. So, uh, whatever you're celebrating, happy that to you. I am Adam Mack, joined as always by Scott Belford. Scott, how you doing?
Hello. I'm doing good, man. We've got a thin panelist group this time, but these are the hardcores, right?
Yeah, not a
Joel.
round table so much as a triangular table today.
Table,
So
yes.
we've got Joel. Joel, hey, Kami, how you doing?
Doing well, especially after a win. Yeah, it was interesting series against Oakland, but we pulled out 2-3, so got to be feeling good.
Yeah, can't complain there. Shout out to our Patreon. So Joel, Joshua, Jeremy, and Ian, thank you for the support on Patreon. I know I've been getting complaints in the Discord because I'm still slacking on A League of Their Own and getting that edited and up. So hopefully this week I should find some time to get that edited and up for our Patreon. Of course, this month the three of us are going to be talking Moneyball. So we still need to figure out a schedule to make that happen, so expect that in the middle of May. Um, but yeah, thanks for everyone supporting on Patreon. $4 a month gets you access to the movie reviews there. Scott and I have discussed as well. We are going to start adding a little bit of a behind the scenes content to the Patreon as well. So typically on all of our episodes before we hit record, Scott and I just kind of bullshit, catch up, whatever, do some show prep before we go live. So if you're interested in seeing any of that stupid nonsense behind the scenes, we're going to start including that in the Patreon as well. Otherwise, our sponsor, today's episode of Long Toss, as with every episode of Long Toss, is brought to you by Oh My Apparel, Team Oh My. So shout out to
Out
Team Oh
hustle
My.
my yesterday is the breakdown of that, by the way, for
Yes, that
everyone.
is what it stands for. Oh My, out hustle my yesterday. It is, what is it? Post sport apparel for athletes, made by athletes for athletes.
Yes. And I'm not an athlete and I wear it and I love it.
But
I
you had to sneakily order it through a friend, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. I had an athlete order it for me so as to not blow my cover.
They're very
Uh,
strict about that. Athletes only.
so you know what's really funny? I always knocked windbreakers. I was like, they're the dumbest looking friggin' things out there.
Okay.
And I got a brand new windbreaker from Oh My, and I absolutely love it. Little tidbit here. It actually does break the wind a lot. I'm like getting why people wear them now. I'm like, oh, it's perfect. It's windy, but I'm still warm. It's great.
My only experience with windbreakers is from like playing Pee Wee baseball. We'd get them the little shell, and probably just because it was the cheapest option for team gear. But I just
Right.
remember them as soon as they'd get wet, they would just like cling to your skin, and then the wind would come, and you'd be instantly extra cold. And it was like, this is the worst. So, anyways, yeah, Team Omai has windbreakers. Forget
There
that
you go.
terrible
Yeah.
rain review I just gave you. But we do have a lot to talk about. We're going to review that Oakland series, do a quick assessment of where the Jays stand to date. We got a heat check on Ryu. Is it time to panic? The umping has been terrible across the leagues. We're going to get into what's happening there. Papa Charlie got tossed. That was good to see. We'll get into that. We're starting to see all the depth pieces on display, for better or for worse. So we'll get into all that. We have an off day tomorrow. And that's, I think, our last off day for the next 3 weeks. And it is a meat grinder after tomorrow. So we'll get into all that. We'll preview that. And then we have a fun little stats race that we're going to compare Jordan Romano and Vlady Guerrero. So a little teaser there towards the end of the show. And then lastly, I think we're going to talk batting order and what we've seen so far, if we're happy with it, and so on from there. So let's start with that. Shout out to the people watching on YouTube. Looks like we've got about 5 or 10 in the live chat. So get your comments and questions in. Probably just check it at the end since Mark isn't here. But get your comments in. I'll scan them at the end, and then we can go over some of them towards the end there. So that is all for housekeeping so far. Oakland, we went 2-1. I wanted the sweep. A sweep always feels like you're asking for a little too much. But I wanted a sweep. We got 2-1, and here's a little stat that Uncle Jer texted me today. The Blue Jays are 6-2 when Ryu doesn't start. That's a pretty good record in non-Ryu games. Where do we start with Oakland?
Should we start with Oakland? I kind of want to talk Ryu now.
All right, I brought up Ryu. Let's talk Ryu. It'll tie back into Oakland.
Because it was announced that he was just put on the 10-day IL, and he was experiencing forearm tightness in that left arm. And honestly, and I don't want this to sound bad, because I really do think that Ryu has a ton of potential to truly help this team in the long term. But it was almost nice to hear something was bothering him, because so like I was looking at the stats. His velo averaged around 91 in that first game of the season. And honestly, that first game, we talked about it. I don't think he looked all that bad. He was a little rough around the edges. They got to him in certain situations. He allowed like 4 ground balls that just had eyes and got through. That's not the game I'm worried about. The game I'm worried about was that second game of the Oakland series, yesterday, where we watched him average velo of 88.6 or something like that, missing his spots. Just the fact that there was something behind that, it does make me go, okay, exhale. Maybe it's not as big a deal as we're making it out to be. Thoughts?
Well, when you say that, I can't help but think of, you never want a guy to be injured, right? Let's start with that. But
yes.
As far as an injury explaining something, for me, the comparison is like Jacob deGrom, who keeps kind of having these like nagging ailments. They send him for MRIs. They always come back clean. They can never find anything, right? But like, you do kind of just hope they go, okay, we found it this time. Now we can fix it and address it. And I feel like maybe that's the case with Ryu, where it's like, what's going on here? It would be nice to just blame it on some, too quick of a ramp up in spring training or something, right? And then there's a light at the end of the tunnel in that regard. I don't know if that's the case, though. I'm starting to worry about Ryu.
Joel, where are you at? Like, where are you at on Ryu?
Well, so my perspective of the entire thing, like for pitching last year, obviously was the sticky stuff, right? And I worried about the guys who saw big number drops after the sticky stuff, and whether that means your spin rate or your control on pitches. Mm-hmm. For Ryu, it seemed a lot more like he kind of lost the control on his changeup later in the season last year, and he wasn't able to spot it low and away the way he usually did, and you saw some consistency issues there. Like when you look at who Garrett Cole is now, right? Garrett Cole still throws the ball 98. He's still got a wipeout slider. He's still got a really great curveball. But what's gone is a little bit of spin and the consistency of being able to hit your spot every single time you throw, every single time out, right? It's about the like you're going to get a roller coaster of days where you feel completely on and the days that you don't really have your best stuff, right? And with sticky stuff, it kind of made it so you never really had those truly bad days. Mm-hmm. Your bad days were never really that bad because you had this thing kind of, cheat code that was helping you get through those games. But what I'm worried about with not just Ryu, it's first of all, I'm happy with the way Gausman is pitching now. His spin rate is actually up on the splitter. Now, people are going to say the splitter is a low rotation pitch, but there is too low for the splitter. And he's got it up right now where he had it at the beginning of last year. So that's like,
which is very encouraging.
That's very encouraging. Kikuchi now is another pitcher who was incredible at the first half of last year. and then in the second half of last year, saw a big drop off at that kind of spin rate moment of drop off, right at the foreign substance moment. So you're like, uh-oh. And the same thing happened with Ryu. So you've technically got three guys there that you're a little bit worried about. You're a little bit worried about how consistent they can be. And you've got Pete Walker there, who's kind of like his own foreign substance. He helps everybody. But it just kind of worries me that last year, Ryu was the guy I was worried about. But now there were three pieces of the pitching rotation that saw that decline. So it's kind of a worry over three different people, I guess.
And one thing I will say about Ryu, now we're going to get into umpiring, so I don't wish to harp on this too much. However, in that first inning of yesterday's game, Ryu's curveball was the best I have seen it since midseason last year. And he was picking corners that were strikes according to the square strike zone, but were being called balls. And then the A's pitchers were throwing it 6 inches off the plate and getting that call. So in that first inning and that second inning, when he was losing those calls, you could see him starting to move his pitches more to that juicy part of the plate. And it's almost like he felt forced to... You're playing the A's, right? If the A's... I don't want the umpires to beat me. So if you're not getting the calls on those outside corners and you're playing Oakland, you're like, okay, then let's make them hit it. And then they hit it, right? Like, they're still professional ball players, and they still put up good numbers there. They managed to get the bat on the ball with him a lot. He got hit deep. So I don't know. Obviously, the lack of velocity was a thing. Obviously, he wasn't picking his spots like he normally does. So I'm not just blaming it on the umps. But you're going to have games like that where you feel squeezed by the umpire, and I truly do believe that was maybe a portion of why Ryu struggled that isn't really being talked about much. Everyone was talking about how much it screwed the batters on the Jays for the umpiring, but I truly believe it affected the pitching as well.
That is a good point, Scott. Like you say, when he makes his bread on painting that outside corner, and that outside corner isn't getting called, like you said, you can't just go out there and walk 7 batters in a row, right?
No.
So you do have to start adjusting where you're throwing it, I guess. So if we're going to give Ryu the benefit of the doubt, or any sort of leeway on yesterday's performance, I think that's where we have to start.
Like, where I'm concerned about Ryu is his velo, right? 88 isn't going to cut it. We need him over 90.
Yeah.
He's never been a power
pitcher.
pitcher.
You need something that you can change up from.
Yes. Because that's his bread and butter, is his changeup and his curve. Like, if you can't play it off the fastball, you're screwed.
So he's in year 3 of a 4-year deal?
I believe so.
How confident are we in moving forward? Because we're not in a position where we can just set every 5th start on fire this year. Like, if we're going to be World Series contenders. So at some point, we do have to kind of make a tough decision with Ryu, right? And I don't know how quickly that comes. Joel, I know you mentioned that, like, the sticky stuff and everything to do with that. Control, obviously a factor with when you have the extra grip on the ball. I'm not convinced that he is a victim of the sticky stuff crackdown. I think that, like, as humans, we do have a, like, pattern recognition bias, right? So we do have the ability to kind of recognize patterns where there are none. And it is, like, the simplest explanation is to lump everyone who fell off after a certain point and go, well, sticky stuff, that's the answer, right? And, like, yeah, that is the easy answer. But there are, like, I don't know, statistically speaking, bound to be guys who just by pure coincidence got to that point in their career at around the same time. And
100%.
I mean, you make a really good point, Adam, about we're going to need to make a tough decision eventually, but let's reel it in a little. This is still April 17th. He's had 2 starts. condensed spring training, there are still. You know what? I know you're laughing
Look,
right now.
No. I know what you're saying. Small sample size, right? And you know I'm the king of small sample sizes. I love touting them when they're in my favor. Go Danny Jansen, MVD. And dismissing them when they are much larger and go against Cavan Biggio. But still, I'm going to have to say, like, to play devil's advocate here, yeah, it's 2 starts with a condensed spring training for Ryu. But also, like, we can look back at the last half of last year, too.
Yes.
And I think
100%.
include that in the sample size. And when you do that, it starts to be pretty bleak. I think the stat that I saw on the screen yesterday during his start was that over his last 11 starts, his ERA was up over 8. And I think it only got bigger yesterday. That's a concern. 11 starts is a pretty big sample size.
See, like when it comes to foreign substance, there's so many different effects. There were like some players were losing like 30-40% of their rotation. Some people were losing very little, like maybe 150, right? It wasn't that big of a drop. And I feel like an example would be like some players weren't, I don't even think we're using anything that was quote illegal, but then they were not allowed to use like even
Sunscreen
like
and rosin.
sunscreen and rosin was kind of right. So let's say that like let's say Ryu is the pitcher who doesn't have the stuff to kind of correspond to the loss of spin. Like he doesn't have the velocity, he doesn't have those other aspects. But let's say like Romano was using rosin and sunscreen last year, right? And he saw a little bit of inconsistency in his slider right after that date, and then reined it right in, and now is the most consistent thing that you've ever seen, right? Like there's big differences between how it affects people and what kind of stuff you're bringing to the table and what adjustments you can make now that you can't use whatever it was you were using before. Because foreign substance gets instantly thought of as spider tech. Mm-hmm. But for some people, it was, like you said, just rosin and a lot of sunscreen, right? Yeah. And so there was like, so you lose a little bit, but that was probably a lot easier to rein in than the guys who had, the Olympic weightlifter sticky stuff on their fingers, and they could climb up the wall if they wanted to. So there's a big, and Ryu is what I'm saying is that he lacks that amazing upper elite stuff to kind of be able to make this shift to be like, well, what do I do now? Well, maybe he was already doing what,
It's a good point. Because what made Ryu elite was his ability to pick the corners, his ability to hit his spots, his ability to mix pitches like he was. And we have not seen that in the last 8 months.
And I never saw Ryu use spider tap. Like I watched a bunch of Ryu, and I never saw him doing something that seemed out of line. Mm-hmm. I never have any visual confirmation that, here's Ryu and he's just gooping up. He's got something under his armpit. I never saw it. So, but at the same time, maybe whatever he was using, if it was really, really subtle, just gave him that control that he needed. And that's, if he doesn't have it, then that ERA balloons to 8 all of a sudden.
So we came into this offseason, we came into spring training. I mean, the most optimistic we could be about Ryu, right? His family's over here now.
Yeah.
Right? There was a lot of... we cut him a lot of slack for that last year with his struggles.
Scenarios, exactly.
Yes. We were thinking he might be our ace again, right? I feel comfortable putting that thought to bed. Now it's the question of, can he be a back of the
solid
rotation
number 4,
guy?
Yeah.
Can he be a solid 4? Can he be a 5? And do we need to start having a consideration about, doesn't matter if we have the consideration, but should the Blue Jays start having those conversations about maybe we could use another lefty in the bullpen? And how does that play?
This is a hard left turn, but can we address what a beautiful pickup Ross Stripling turned out to be in the long run of this team? Like, my God, that guy has been the perfect Band-Aid in almost every
Yeah.
worst case scenario that has been presented to the Blue Jays starting last year, mid-season, right? When he stepped up and the starting rotation and the bullpen were both on fire, and every time it went to the bullpen it was trouble, and he stepped up and he all of a sudden was pitching 7 innings and allowing 1 run, and just like he had that like 11 start run where it was just like, is Ross Stripling a number 2, right? And now he steps up out of the bullpen, out of that long man spot, does a spot start to start the series against Oakland, pitches fantastic, gives them exactly what they needed. Like Ross Stripling, imagine if he winds up being the number 5 we need after all of this is said and done.
Well, it's not out of the question for sure. Yeah, I think Russ Stripling is our number 5. I probably have more confidence in Stripling right now getting the start than I do in Ryu.
I do.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kikuchi as well if we want to throw him in the mix. I just want to, again, sorry to like pile on with Ryu, but this is a guy who like it ties into the Stripling thing. So he's been touted as like, well, he always pitches better with that extra day's rest, right? If you can get him the 6th day, he always pitches better. Well, what was it, 2 years ago going into the playoffs, we finagled our schedule so that he got the extra day's rest, pitched on 6 days instead of 5. That didn't go well.
No, it didn't.
Right? Here we go, start number 2 of this season. Stripling, like you said, took the spot start. So Ryu got an extra day of rest. So this should have been a positive experience for Ryu, and it was still bad. On like, how many days of rest does he need? I don't know. I do like Stripling. I think there's lots to be optimistic about there. He was very competent for us last year. Him and Matt's both very. I'm missing
competent.
Matt's right now.
That's a great word. Very competent for us. That's a great word.
As far as
and to be for the
go ahead, Joel.
I was just gonna say, for both those guys to be successful in the AL East, like any type of pitching success that you have in the AL East is above and beyond literally the pitching success that you have anywhere else. And to counter the fall offs that you saw from foreign substance, Stripling had his most success after the ban, right? He found most of his success literally like end of June, July, and August of last year were his best times. And that made me think, I was like, well, why is he getting demoted right off the bat to being this bullpen arm when I felt like Ross Stripling as a number 5 was always a pretty solid option. So yeah, like you guys said, I feel like if either, it's almost like I trust more in Stripling, and it's like we need Ryu and Kikuchi, one of them, to find it. We need one of those guys to find some sort of consistency so that you don't have that consistent, like you can't have 2 guys going out there over 5 giving you games that you have to just dig out of a hole in the first or second inning. You can't be having that, 40% of the time. So I like Stripling.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. And I think that this front office knew all along that Stripling was a perfect backup plan and may wind up being far more consequential or, like substantial to this team than maybe at the outbreak of the season when the lineup is listed and he's your long man out of the pen. I think they knew that he's probably going to be a much bigger contributor than just the long man. But to see it so quickly, not really the greatest. Not what I was hoping for. But should we get into this Oakland series? Or,
yeah.
We can still talk pitching then, but like.
No, let's get into the Oakland series. I just want to scroll through the YouTube comments here before we move on to the next topic.
Perfect.
So we got a happy birthday for Hey Kami. That comes in.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Birthday, Joel.
So happy birthday,
thank you.
Joel. Michael says it'll be nice to see the Yankees in a couple weeks at home as a break in the schedule. LOL there. After the Yanks got beat up on by the Orioles. Yeah, a lot of people agreeing that Ryu has looking washed up. Not a lot of positivity for Ryu coming in from the comment section here.
This is
NBA
a guy with
playoffs are happening. Why are you doing this? Are you, either of you guys Raptors fans?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm a Raptors fan during the playoffs, so
Yeah.
I
I
was
don't watch
bummed out by last
basketball at
night's
all,
game.
but
Yeah.
as far as
No, this
basketball
is
goes.
yeah.
This one this is a good one. Time to call in R.A. Dickey and teach Ryu the magic of the knuckleball. There you go. If you can't get the velocity up, let's get the velocity way down.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah, I don't
Knuckleball
know what
in
else to say
the dome.
on Ryu there, unfortunately. Is this just one last question here on the starting pitching before we move on to the Oakland series in general? Are we stuck? Is this like is this something we just have to ride out? I guess is what I'm getting at. Or how do we fix the Ryu problem? Let's just say, look, we give him another start. Let's say it doesn't go well. We get into crisis mode, and we just decide as a team we need to fix this. Where does that help come from? Because, okay, we can do Stripling. We can build him up into the starting role. But what if Kikuchi's also struggling? Like, where are we going to continue to look? Are we looking from the minor leagues? Do we have a minor league prospect either of you think is close that could make the step up? Or are we looking for a trade?
Let's start with the fact that Kikuchi is making $16 million this year, and Ryu is making $20 million. That is $36 million. There is no way that either of them are only given another start or two. They are going to be given all sorts of rope. We're going to be talking about this until the beginning of June.
Yeah, look,
they're either going to find it or they're not.
Look, I would agree with you, other than my Exhibit A is someone named Tanner Roark, who got DFA'd with $12 million that he got to walk away with. That happened in, I believe, April.
They're not DFA and Ryu, though. Like,
I'm not saying they're DFA and Ryu, but I mean, like, money is meant to be spent at some point. You got to just look at a guy and go, and I'm not saying this about Ryu, okay? I'm not saying it's time to cut ties, right? But I'm saying at some point, and I don't know what that magic number is, at some point, tough decisions need to be made. This isn't a team who is up at the salary cap threshold. We're down, 3/4 of the way down. We do have room to, like, set a little bit of money on fire, right? And whether it's a DFA or it's a move to the bullpen, I mean, he's going to get his full salary, right? So,
yeah,
I don't know. But how do we fix it? It's just all I just want to answer, Scott. How do we fix it? Don't tell me that we can't fix it. Don't tell me we're stuck.
I think Stripling is huge. I think Stripling is going to, I mean, especially considering Ryu was just put on the 10-day IL, so he's missing 2 starts for sure. They're going to give him some rest, and there's even talk of him getting some rehab starts in the minor leagues. We might not see Ryu for a month. So I think Stripling is now our number 5 starter in this rotation. I think that Kikuchi has had 1 start, and yes, it wasn't a very pretty start, but he's had 1 start. So he was their one guy that they went out and they felt that they could turn him around. And if you look at Steven Matz's stats off the start of the season last year, he was not lighting the fire or the world on fire, right? And he had those moments, and I think we all remember when he was getting really frustrated. He was getting hit hard, even though he was literally like Pete Walker. I remember listening to an interview with Pete Walker. It probably was around May last year about Steven Matz. And Walker even said, I'm not worried. He's on the right track. He's going to figure it out. But he was getting frustrated. And we all remember Steven Matz getting pulled from that game in the 4th inning when he comes in to the dugout and he throws his glove against the wall and he beat the crap out of that 24-pack of water bottles, right? And he just had a little flip out. And then we look back on 2021 and we act like Steven Matz was such a savior, but Steven Matz didn't find it until 2 months into the season. So I think what's going to happen is exactly that sort of same thing, right? They're going to give Kikuchi rope. They're going to, and think about from an ego standpoint, what a team player Ryu is, where he's like, you know what, like maybe I actually do need to go down to AAA for a couple rehab starts and see if I can figure this shit out. because you don't figure stuff out in the big leagues. You just either you get hit or you don't, right? Like you figure stuff up in the minors. So maybe you give Ryu 10 days to kind of rest his arm and do whatever and send him down to AAA to throw with the Bisons. I think the solution is trying to get these guys to find it. I don't think it's calling up, one of our AAA starters. Like that is one thing with the starters in this organization is the depth isn't great. Our best starters are in Vancouver right now.
Yeah.
At A ball, right? High A. So
we got a ways to go. They're not getting
we
called
got a
up.
ways to go.
I was going to say to that point, it's a little tough right now because we've got some injuries in the lineup. So the offense is slightly it's been slightly weakened. Teoscar out of the lineup, Danny, and what he was doing at the bottom of the lineup. That was very, very helpful, and that helps you fight back from these starts. You're not necessarily completely out of the game. The thing that I wanted to say though was, once the lineup is healthy, I think the opportunity to give them, like Scott was saying, a little bit more rope to try to figure things out. Obviously, it's an injury thing with Ryu, but with Kikuchi, like they have some time, and then if we had the assets to potentially move for a Jose Ramirez, I think we easily have enough internally to go for a starter who's at the end of a 1-year contract. Like even think about like a guy off the top of my head, like Kansas City is out of it, and you just need a consistent starter, and you go pick up Greinke for the end of the year, right?
Sure.
You know what you're going to get. You're going to get consistent innings. You're going to get that guaranteed consistent number 4 guy who will probably give you a 60% winning chance with this lineup, right? A guy like magically St. Louis is out of it. You can finagle Adam Wainwright. You can go grab these guys who are on 1-year deals that aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg, and then they can fill in for that. So I think whatever the case may be, whether it's filled by these guys coming around or being able to make a trade 2 months down the line, I don't think it's that big of a deal, because Stripling can pitch. You can find somebody out there to fill you 150 or so innings, and then you should be okay.
Out of curiosity, how did you, because they got 2 wins in this Oakland series,
Yep.
2 or 3. They did what they had to do. Obviously, I would have, especially when you look at this schedule coming up, which we are going to get to shortly here, it is by far the next 5 weeks is the most difficult portion of the schedule for the Toronto Blue Jays, without a doubt. There isn't a lot of days off. They are all Red Sox, Astros, Yankees games, which is great come July when you look at the schedule and you're like, we don't play the Yankees again for we play one series. Like, it's fantastic. But how did you guys feel, just the feel, the emotion of this Oakland series? Because they didn't really instill a bunch of confidence in me for what's going on, even today's game, it was so much closer than I wanted it to be. Even the win with Stripling in it, same thing. And even yesterday's game where they it was 5-5 going into the 8th, and then they still managed to and it's Oakland.
Yeah. I'll let you go, Adam.
Well, I'm thrilled with it. I can't remember, what was the score of the first game of the series. Was that a pole-to-pole victory, or was that a back and forth? I can't even remember now. It's funny how baseball just starts to fade in the memories when you get 48 hours behind.
Yeah, the Stripling game.
Yeah, the Stripling game, they won 4-1.
Yeah.
They were. It was a good game. The Stripling game was a good game.
Yeah, I felt like that was a good game. The loss to Oakland sucked. It was a gut punch, but
yeah.
I mean, to be the optimist and the silver lining guy just for a moment,
just to change roles and show you can do it all.
Just to change
right?
roles for 1 second. Don't worry, I'll be back. I do like that they battled back. I mean, that is the positive to to take away, right? Is that they were down 5-1, they battled back and tied it up. I mean, did they ultimately not finish what they were supposed to do? Like, yeah, but I don't know. I do
you're
like
right.
seeing
A
that they
win is a
battled.
win. Like a win is a win, right? And they won this series.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy with it. You look at New York not being able to pull out 2 out of 3 against Baltimore, so I'm happy with being able to pull 2 out of 3 against Oakland. And Oakland's like, we think that they're out of it, but aren't they leading the American League in runs scored?
Yeah, but didn't they also have like a lopsided game against the Rays because of like a starter went down with injury and
Sure, but with an absolute like blow up team that just doesn't like you're looking at
I
names that
yeah,
the
look, Oakland
castaways.
is
It's
a minor league team. I made this joke on the weekend. They should rename themselves the Oakland AAAs because that's what they are. And look, that's the only reason we won today. We won 4-3 on the back of 7 Oakland errors. It felt like
oh yeah, they threw today away. So
literally
um,
threw it away. I don't
yeah,
know.
they
I
did.
saw one of the
I
worst
love that you
ground
said
balls to the
7 as an
chest that I've ever seen at third
Oh
base.
right, yeah, the
It was
opening
a
play of the
highlight
game
he will
was-
never live down.
Yeah.
So
I love that you said 7 as an exaggeration. I think they did have like 4 or 5 errors. Like
Yeah.
it was bad.
it
Yeah.
was a bad one. They had a couple plays where multiple errors on the same play. We're lucky to get out of there with 2 out of 3 wins, if you're honest, because I don't know that we deserve to win today. If we're talking just like strength of our own performance and our pitchers and everything like that, I don't know if we deserve to win today. We did. I don't know if we deserve to lose yesterday. We did. That's how baseball goes, right?
Sure good to see Manoah stepping up, though. He has been just a beacon of consistency since he was called up.
How many more
he
starts
continues to blow
does-
me away. Like,
Look, now
How
you
many
know
more
why
starts-
Manoah's wearing number 6. It's because he's going out there and he's giving you 6. Like
yeah.
he's
Um,
just
the one positive thing that I was going to say was the fact that we were not really in tight games last year. That was our kind of weakness,
yeah.
right? And every win that we have this year has come with a Romano save, meaning every win has been a tight game.
6
come
of
down to
them.
the wire, right? So that's a good sign because last year I would say that was our weakness, was that we wouldn't always hold out in the tight games, we wouldn't pull it out late, and this year, and it says something else about our bullpen is that if we get the lead late, especially going into that 9th inning, you've got that consistency of we only need to win for 8 innings, right? Because that lockdown.
I mean, the pen has been incredible, right? Like
Yes,
the
it
pen
really
has
has.
been
Well,
exciting.
look, before
like,
we touch on the pen, because we will get to that with Romano at the end, and we could talk the entire bullpen before we get to that. But I do think that's a great point from Joel. I mean, the run differential last year was absurd, especially like very lopsided relative to the actual record we had. Was not indicative of the run differential we
games
had.
they were playing,
But
yeah.
so many, like we weren't winning by 2 and 3 runs all the time. We would lose the close ones, and then when we would win, we would have that explosive home run game where we would win 14-2 or 8-0 or 9-3. That's not how playoff games work. So like this is the positive takeaway from this Oakland game is that like you can't just afford to flush a win down the toilet. You can't walk away at the I guess this is the difference between this year and last year is that last year it did feel like if we were down by like 4, and I know we did have a couple good comebacks, but if we were down by a bunch early, the mentality was just like, okay, don't let it get to you. Today's a write-off. We'll bounce back tomorrow.
We'll get him tomorrow. Yeah.
And I don't think that that's how you win 100 games. I think you got to fight for every win, whether you come up short or not, and that's the positive takeaway from yesterday. So I like to see it.
I don't want to talk about the bullpen. We're going to talk about it later. But the fact that they can just, if you are down 4 in the first, and then you realize that, you put up 2 in the first 5 innings, and now it's 4-2 because that bullpen locked it down for 4 innings. No matter, it's like it's the fact that lead doesn't keep blasting upward to an unattainable number. It stays pretty much here. And then we'll get that many runs. With this offense going the way it will.
There has been some big steps forwards from guys that, if Jays fans had their way going into the season, would have already been off the team. Trent Thornton comes to mind because he has been shockingly a bit of a savior in the early get-go here, where the Jays get down and he comes in and has been pretty shut down. You know, he just give them like yesterday's game was a prime example of him coming in and giving them 2 shutdown innings and allowing them to kind of claw their way back into it. Something
You're
you
down
didn't see last year.
4 runs, you get back to 5-5, and you have a 50-50 chance of winning a game. Like that's and Adam's completely right. We didn't see that kind of scrappiness last year. We didn't. It would almost seem like there were 2 different kinds of games. There were the tight games that we would fold on, and there were the big games that we blow up. And you can't. That's not sustainable into the postseason where you have to win games by 1 run.
And Tim Mesa just quietly becoming one of the best lefties out of the pen in the American League. It is wild. Like, again, he did it again today.
Yeah,
just
4 up, 4
shut
down for
down 8
Mesa today.
Just unreal. I love it.
Love what we're seeing from Mesa. Thornton, like you said, he's basically Batman. He's not the hero we deserve, but he's the hero we need. And, we've definitely shit on Thornton a time or two. So the fact that he's having a good start to the season is great. Hopefully it's sustainable, whether it is or not. Hopefully someone else pans out by the time he trails off. I mean, last year the bullpen was great through May too, right? And then all of a sudden, through April. And then kind of came back down to reality in May. So,
and we even had it bolstered today. Ryan Borucki is off the IL and coming back. I love this bullpen. But again, we will touch on this more later. But
touch on bullpen later. I guess while we're on the topic of the Oakland series and scrappy playoff baseball, one of my biggest takeaways through the first 3 series has been the aggressive base running that this team has seemingly committed to, maybe overcommitted to. How are you guys feeling about the new focus on aggressive base running? Because we've seen, I think Bo Bichette's been picked off twice at first now. Chapman's been picked off. Espinal was caught stealing today. Vlady was caught stealing yesterday. Like, they are going for it.
It's fun to watch.
It's fun to watch.
Seeing some hit and runs?
Seeing some hit and runs. Yeah, we're seeing, I mean, Gurriel scored from first today. I think there was a throwing error on that play, but still. These guys have speed, and we haven't always used it in the past. So I think it is a big advantage that they're going out there and they're looking to be aggressive. Do you have any concerns though with being too aggressive on the base path? Because personally, I don't. I'm not at all worried about it. I think it's just a trade-off. I don't like seeing Bo Bichette get picked off at first so often.
Yeah, I'm going to say that there's points where I like when we're healthy and Bo is on first. He doesn't need, like, he could take a 1-foot lead off for all I care, because I want Vlady swinging. I want Teo swinging. I want those guys. And then I want the aggressiveness in the running to come after the ball is hit. You know, I don't mind you guys taking the extra base on the weak arm that's in the corner outfield that you can take it on, right? Like, there's a lot of guys on the team that can do that. And I love the athleticism. I just don't want there's points where we're stealing a base and getting thrown out with 2 outs is okay, because, hey, Vladdy's got 2 strikes on him, and he's going to get those strikes reset for the next inning. Sure, I don't mind that. But don't get picked off, you know, when he can put a swing on a ball like yeah, it's I like the speed, but more so after the ball is hit than risking the core of the lineup and their ability to put 2 or 3 runs on the board.
Scott, how do you feel?
I agree with what Joel is saying. I do have a few thoughts on this. Number one, I loved Espinal running today. Whenever Kirk is behind, I don't care who Kirk is batting behind. That guy, when he gets on first, should be looking to run, or at least looking to get a move on, because, and I I'm shocked every time I watch it how slow Kirk is. He's got a lot of skills, but like every time I watch him run, I'm like, is he slower than the last time? Like,
Is
so I
Charlie
think
Montoyo pinch running for Kirk?
I think that there is really good places to run, and I think we're seeing the Blue Jays take advantage of those places a little bit more than they used to. And listen, I don't care what you do in life. You don't get good at something without doing it. It is April 17th, and if the Blue Jays truly wish to integrate the running game into their arsenal of offense, then now is the time to start to figure it out.
Yep.
Pickoffs, unacceptable. I hate a pickoff. You absolutely should not get picked off. But you know what? Getting picked off will do. It humiliates you. And you are going to pay a little bit more attention. Maybe you're watching the video of the pitchers a little bit closer and being like, what is their move? Maybe I should know this. Maybe I should have timed that better, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't – we've talked about this with guys, Adam, from the minor league system within this organization. Right, guys who are fast and good at stealing bases. And they talk about it. Chavez Young talked about it to us exclusively about how there are guys that are far faster than he is who would never run like he runs. There's an art to stealing bases, to reading the pitchers, to timing your lead, to not getting picked off. And if you don't do it, if you don't practice it, if you don't learn it, there's just certain things you can't learn in the game. So I'm all for them being overly aggressive right now, April 17, in this 2022 season. Do I wish to see them be this aggressive in August? Only if they know exactly what the frick they're doing, right? Like, I don't wish to see unnecessary outs, but is it fun to watch? Hell yeah. I'm all for the run and gun game.
I will add two more thoughts to this, and then we'll move on to the terrible umpire situation that's been pretty egregious through the first 2 weeks of the season. First of all, getting picked off is 7 times worse than getting caught stealing. It is unacceptable, period. I cannot put a big enough period at the end of that sentence. Yeah. Getting picked off and doing it twice in the first 2 weeks is dog shit. Excuse my language, but it's...
You learned that word from Charlie Montoya.
I did, yeah. I was lip reading. So I don't like that. That is unacceptable. All the times we've been caught stealing, Vlady going for it, Espinal getting caught today. I think that, look, whether or not this team gets good at base stealing, there's value in just being the team who is known for like going for it. Right? Defenses start to play you a little differently, right? They have to respect that game, right? The pitcher, I mean, maybe it doesn't sound like much, but when the opposite is true, boy, is it an advantage defensively, right? So we can all agree on that, right? If you know that Albert Pujols is the base runner on first and you don't even have to guard against it, right? And you can just focus on defensive positioning and just pit, you're not worried about the pickoff, right? So let's just swing it the other way. If it is Vlady who's on first and you go, that guy's crazy, he could go at any moment, right? There is real value in that. And I think that, like Scott said, look, this is April. Let's set the tone. This is going to be an aggressive base running team, and I love it. If we get caught stealing all the time, as long as the wins keep piling up, I'm okay with it. But yeah, you can't get picked off. That's unacceptable. So that needs to get resolved. I like the idea of Bo heading to the video room in humiliation and going, yeah, Adam's going to really roast me on the next long toss if I get picked off again. So I better get my shit together. Any other thoughts there on the aggressive base running that we've seen so far? Sounds like we're all pretty well in favor of it, but.
Well, I was going to say on the part of the pitching, like, to get into a hitter's or a pitcher's head and he's thinking about that is always going to play well for the batter. And when you look at a team like New York, who is, I feel like they had to shift slightly away from like their Godzilla approach of just these massive people who can't move really well. and you've got so many guys there like Stanton, Judge, Donaldson, LeMahieu, these guys can't really move. You don't really send them first to third you confidently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love first to third. I love Gurriel being able to score. You know, I love that ability that you're confident rounding the base and you're not coming into it. You're like, I'm a big guy. Are you sure? Are you sure that I should go to the next base? And you're second guessing it. You're like, I don't know. Do you see how I run? And like Judge getting thrown out in the one game wild card last year, and Phil Nevin being like, "Come on, you should be running," and he's like, "Oh man, you should be sending me here." And you got that second guess in their step, and then they're gone, right? Like if you've got the aggressiveness and that you don't the ball is hit and you just say whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do. If you're sending me, I'm full speed all the way until you tell me to stop. So yeah, I like that our team can do that and that we're young enough to be athletic, right? Because some teams aren't that young anymore, and they have to do things so that you stay in the lineup as opposed to scoring a run.
Vlady Wheels too has impressed me because he is faster. Listen, in 2020, this is a stat I saw that just kind of blew my mind. In 2020, he was in the bottom 20 percentile for foot speed in the MLB, and he's above 60% now. That's a
marked improvement.
That's a pretty massive increase.
For anybody who plays the show, like buy his card because it's gonna go to like 97 overall. You know, it's like he's already at a 90 like 3 or something in that game, but it's all on offense. They have his defense and his running like down in the toilet, and the fact that those places are going to go up, the speed makes his defense better. So that card's going to be incredible.
Speaking of his defense, how awesome has he looked defensively at first base?
Incredible.
Year?
I wanted to say that Bo was the best like defensive improvement that I've seen, but honestly, it's Vlady. Vladdy's making plays that he wasn't making before. He's scooping everything. He's really confident over there. And I don't think have we talked about him going to third base ever? Like that's done, right? Especially because we have Chapman, but like that's not something that I care about when he's 25 or 26. He's a first baseman now, right?
He's a first baseman.
And the over-the-shoulder catches that he wasn't making last year and is now making like it's an everyday play, that is what stands out to me. That is what is impressing me.
It's your foot. It's what you said about being a 20 percentile runner to being a 60th percentile runner. It gets you 2 steps, 3 steps closer to the ball. So it's gently landing in your glove as opposed to you outstretched, having no idea where it is. You get there quicker, and the defense, it's just one coincides with the other. His base running is better. The ball player, the bat was as good as you've ever seen, and now the ball player's catching up, which is just a crazy thought.
Like, he's never going to be Teoscar Hernandez for foot speed, who, by the way, is the fastest dude in a 90-foot span on this Blue Jays team. But Teoscar's a great example of a guy who, he can go first to third with the best of them. He can go first to home on a double, no problem. But he's not a base stealer. Never has been. Doesn't even want to be, right? Like, he'll get his lead. He'll take that secondary base if it's available, but he's not digging in. What was his? I think he had 8 steals last year, which for the fastest guy on the Jays. You know, like
Chavez Young just rolling his eyes every time we talk about Teoscar. All right, well, let's move on to the bad umpires. But before we do, we'll just have a quick look at the YouTube comments here. So this one comes in. Isn't Chapman always scoring important runs? The guy has always been relevant with his RBIs. I loved it. That's why I was so happy we got him. What do you guys think? I've been thrilled with Chapman. I know his average has been a little lower than we would have liked. A little bit of a slow start, but has come up with some big hits in that Oakland series. Defensively, again, it seemed like he had some struggles there. Maybe just some nerves at the start of the season. I don't know what it was. He double clutched a couple and bobbled one. Does he ever look good at third base, though?
He made a play today on a ball where he threw it to second.
That's the one I was thinking of too.
You would normally think that the third baseman just throws the ball to first and concedes that runner at second, but he throws an absolute dart without any doubt, no hop, nothing, just a seed to get that runner at second.
Scott, you listen to it on the radio because you're old. But yeah, this
Because
play
I was driving, jerk.
That's right. Put a little iPad up on your dash, okay? Uh, if anybody wants to pull you over, just say it's a Tesla. No, but this play is like a hot shot down the line, so he catches it, or he gets to it in front of third base essentially, and yeah, just throws across his body an absolute laser beam to second base, and just so we get the lead runner, right? Keep a guy out of scoring position. I mean, the difference between having a guy on first base with 2 out and a guy on second base with 2 out is like just such an extra value that, like, as much as we love Espinal defensively, I don't even want him thinking about making that play.
Yeah.
When he's subbing in at third, like, you scoop that up, just go to 1. Let's just take the
Get
out.
your out.
Don't even think about it, right? So the fact that, like, those are the little added value that Chapman brings to third base that, like, I think if you're just casually watching the game is easily, like, doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet at the end of the year, but, like,
exactly,
such a huge value add having him at third there, and love it.
Couldn't agree more. And while we're talking third base, do you think it's safe to say that Cavan Biggio has kind of lost his everyday position? Like, he's just officially a bench guy now?
Yeah, I mean, Biggio's definitely someone we should talk about. I know we got some comments here in the live chat asking about Biggio.
Like,
Joel, you want to go ahead?
But...
I'll just roll Chapman into Biggio. I feel like with the bat, if Chapman can hit 235 to 250, like that's going to be incredible. It was 200 last year, at a 35-point jump in his batting average. Even though it's 235 right now, I'm like, that's a number that I can happily be very happy with at the end of the season. He's hitting 235. His OPS will probably be close to 800, maybe like 785, and then the defense just takes over and just saves you and saves you and saves you. But with Biggio becoming like a bench piece, it's almost like he's starting. I've always said Ben Zobrist is what you want out of him, and he made some really nice plays in the outfield today.
Yep.
And the fact that you got a guy like, look what they do with DJ LeMahieu in New York. They get him his at bats, whether it's at first base, it's at second base, third base. They find a way to get him into the lineup. And if Cavan can get his bat and his on base percentage going to where we know it can be, then I don't mind him being plugged into those places when a guy needs a day off here. Well, second base is open now. Now it's left field. Now it's right field. Hell, it's center field. Like he's played everywhere. And the thing that I love about Cavan is still that when that inside pitch is coming at him, his feet just lock into the ground. He just cements himself into the ground, and he's like, if that thing hits me, it hits me. And it does. And he's just like his father. And there's something in the Biggio genetics that say balls don't hurt when they hit me at 95, wherever. Just take it. And I love that. And I don't. So it's a bench piece, but it's like a utility piece is very, very important to be that true utility man and a left-handed bat. So,
well, especially the way the Blue Jays seemingly like to use the DH role, where it is just like a rotating day off for everyone, right? So you get Springer out of the lineup for a day, you plug Biggio in. I know we've got Zimmer and we've got Tilapia and stuff, right? But generally speaking, I do think that is a good fit. However, is he ever off? Sorry, Tapia.
You think he's still going to be? How many times is he going to be hitting fifth for the lineup this year? You know, that was that was an interesting.
No one who wanted fucking left-handed balance in this lineup is allowed to complain about Tilapia hitting fifth, because that was the glorious 3 left-handed bats balanced lineup that everybody wanted.
Not like that.
No, but that's it, right? Like, sure, if we can add Rizzo, like, yeah, let's add Rizzo and Soto. Those are the left-handed bats. Okay, I'm good for that.
It's the first time in the history of baseball that there was a negative launch angle in the 5 spot. Like, that's never happened before.
As far as Cavan goes, and I defend Cavan Biggio to the levels that are only matched by Scott's defense of Ryu, okay? I I think everybody
Fair,
who's been here for
fair.
more than 2 episodes knows how we feel about those two guys. But is he ever off to an ice cold start?
Yeah.
And it sucks because, well, it sucks as a Biggio believer because Espinal is having the kind of start that really
He's going to take his job.
It's
He's going to take his
It's
job.
Espinal's
He
job
knows
at second base. Espinal is our
Yeah.
everyday second baseman. I can't argue
Every
with
day.
that. I mean, I don't know where we find bats for Biggio at this point. Like, does
outfield now, like, I mean,
I guess, but like, so is he just a sixth outfielder? Because we've got,
Well,
let's just say
he
when
played at
everyone's
first.
healthy, right? We've got Gurriel in left, we got Springer in center, we got Teoscar in right. Behind them, we've got Tapia and Zimmer, and then Biggio.
Well, I think
I put Biggio ahead of Tapia personally, but
Look, I do too, from like an attitude and a work ethic kind of thing. Like, I'm not a believer in Tapia. I've seen enough to be like, I cringe every time I see anything hit towards him. I don't like the way he doesn't run out infield hits. I don't like his attitude, to be honest. But I don't know. I mean, we got a 2-person roster cut coming up on May 1st. We're 2 weeks away from 2 people getting sent down to AAA or getting released. So where's Biggio fit into this? How does he find a way onto the 26-man roster?
I just think it's the utility aspect of him, because even saw time at first when
Yeah. They cover for Vlad
Guerrero,
on Vlad's DH day.
yeah. So it's like who is like, I don't know, just the fact that he can do all of those things and then he can pinch run. You know, like if you're looking at
he's 23 for
Tapia,
24 in stolen base attempts.
yeah. So it's just like you can plug him in during the game. You can find a spot for him to come in, especially like say it's a big blowout and you want to take somebody off their feet. Cavan comes in. You need a pinch runner late in the game. Cavan comes in. You need some on base for a righty matchup at the end of the game. Cavan comes in. Like there's places to put him.
I love this in theory, but also it feels like they're not doing it. Like, it feels like through the first 9 games, I've seen a more than a handful of opportunities where it seemingly would make sense to pinch run for Kirk, or to have the lefty bat to come in for whoever at the bottom of the order to pinch hit for this guy, and then they're not doing it. And I don't know how much confidence they have in him. He doesn't seem to have a whole lot of confidence in himself, but I do recognize, like, yeah, the utility value is a real thing. The base running, real value. But man, he's got to get his bat going. Like, drawing walks and getting hit by a pitch is a valuable way to get on base as a complement to a 230 batting average.
Exactly, 230. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, Adam. I think Biggio's rope is getting shorter every single day. He's not owed a lot of money. He's a guy who knows.
He has options left, I believe.
He could be. I was just gonna say that he could be that guy who finds himself in Buffalo when this roster goes back down to a 26-man roster. And I mean, that's still a fairly valuable piece to have hidden in AAA. If bad tacos start to become a little bit more more plentiful than we've seen. But even if you look, by the way, I know you brought up Kirk. Are we? I'm starting to lose a little bit of patience with Kirky. I don't know how you guys are feeling.
Well,
but
sorry, just before we move on to Kirk, because there's a lot to dissect
We're jumping
there.
all over the
I
place.
do think with Biggio, that might be the best option for him because he's not getting enough bats.
He's not
right now to fix anything. I mean, we watched during the broadcast, I think it was Hazel May was talking about her conversation with Espinal earlier in the day, and she had said, like, because Espinal's getting so many bats, his confidence is really growing, right? He's starting to see more pitchers. He's starting to see his strengths and his weaknesses, right? And what kind of pitches he can hit, which kind of pitches he should take the other way, and stuff like that. You don't get that from being a dugout bench piece, right? So, like, maybe that is what we need to do with Cavan, is just like, send him down to AAA, get him 4 at-bats a day, get that bat heated up so that, come May or June or whenever we need him, at least he's ready to go. But like giving him 6 at-bats a week is not doing anybody a favor. And with the value of the utility and everything there, like we do need a strong, productive Cavan Biggio on this team. So,
and the truth of it is, if they send him down to Buffalo and he still continues to chug along, hitting 220 and not putting the bat on the ball and lacking, plate discipline, it's over. Job's Espy's.
I think
we
so.
Can stop
Okay,
talking Biggio.
Let's talk Kirk now. Your patience is running out. This is the first time I've heard this kind of talk from Mr. Scott Belford, so I want to hear more.
Just the more that I watch him, the more that I have watched the opposing pitchers have adjusted, and he has yet to adjust. Listen, you can still very well get away with saying small sample size. He hasn't played a full season yet. He hasn't even hit that 162 games played. He's being thrust into that number 1 catching role, which he's still 22. I don't really think he's ready for that number 1 catching role. We've talked about in the past how long it takes to actually get to know a pitching staff, to be able to call a good game, to be able to gain the trust of your pitchers. But the one thing that has always worked for Kirk is his bat. And it's not really working right now. Again, small sample size. We're 10 games in. I'm not saying panic. But all I'm saying is we just watched Zach Collins. And listen, I'm aware, totally different scenario. This is a guy who's, as it is probably back against the wall. But Zach Collins looked pretty darn good since being thrust into this lineup. I'm just curious how everyone else is feeling about Kirk. Am I being insane? Like, should I stop worrying? Because I have, for the first time since Alejandro Kirk has been a member of this Blue Jays team, started to be like, should he be getting this playing time he's seeing? Joel, I'm super curious what you think.
Well, with Kirk, he's dealing with, like, look at him having to be the starting catcher right now, right? That's tough, not only because he's so young, but because you brought in Gosman. How much time did he have to work with Barrios last year, and Kikuchi, right? 3 starting arms that he's pretty much like really learning at the beginning of his career. And they have the weird aspect at the beginning of the season of DHing the catcher. So like he's coming in with, you're going from catcher, which is the like least there's the least offense is expected out of the position, to DH, which is the most offense is expected out of that position, right? So that is a big jump in your expectations of a player,
for sure. Yeah,
right. So you're sitting there and you're coming up, and what are your expectations on Kirk last year? It's like, hey, if you can catch every third, fourth game and you can hit pretty well, that's what we need out of you. And then next year you come up, it's like, now we need you to be the starting catcher and our DH. And it's just like, wait, what? It's like that's a hell of a lot to put on a 22-year-old catcher. I'm sure that he will be up for the challenge, but it's a situation where he's almost like a Salvador Perez, where his bat outweighs his catching ability, at least right now. So you sacrifice a little bit of catching for the bat, but when the bat's not there, then you're sacrificing on both levels. And so that's what I see that right now, and I understand that. I have utter faith in the guy. I love his swing through the zone. I love his strike zone being so small. He literally doesn't look like he looks like he's trying so hard to move, but he's running in quicksand and he's not like getting anywhere when he runs. But I'm okay with it. It's just the situation that he's been thrown with Danny at the beginning of the season. That's really, really tough. If Danny comes back healthy and Kirk can slide into that, backup catcher role who gets to occasionally DH, I think that's what he's more suited for right now. And trying to take on the entire pitching rotation, like that's probably in his head, thinking about how to catch Gosman's slider, how to catch the Kikuchi
Mhm.
stuff, how to catch Barrios, because all those guys are very different in how they throw and how they want to throw. So as a catcher, your mind is blowing up with the new work that you have to do. So
And I didn't, just to clarify, like, I didn't want to frame this like, is Kirk on the bubble or anything. It was
no,
more
no,
just
not
a
at all.
general, should we be slightly concerned? But yeah, like, his age is the one thing that makes me be like, okay, every 22-year-old catcher is going to run into scenarios like this where maybe their progression doesn't seem quite as on pace as maybe it was. Maybe they're in a little over their head. Like, I'm not panicking, but he's definitely not a number one catcher right now.
Oh yeah, not yet, not yet. Unless if he's hitting 310, then he can be a number one catcher. But
Sure,
yeah,
I'm with you.
the
Yeah,
bat's got to come around.
I, I think I think for better or worse, he stays on this team, uh, even past the 26-man contraction there. I don't see him getting sent down to AAA unless he really starts to struggle. Hopefully, Danny's back. Hopefully, he can start catching once a week and can get his. But the best way Kirk can help this team win a World Series, and that context is the only context that matters for this team or should matter for this team. Best way Kirk can help this team win a World Series this year is get that hitting up and then be traded in late July for an Adam Wainwright or a Zach Greinke type. Someone who, like Joel mentioned off the top, can help this team with a playoff run. Because I think that's the best value we can get for Kirk is just a legitimate pitching help on a playoff run. I mean, but we
I
need him to
think
have value. I don't think he builds that value by hitting well in AAA.
yeah, you wanna flip Kirk for Frankie Montas,
Sure.
in 6 weeks from now. Like I'm all for it. But yeah, no, I understand that. And this we had the pieces apparently for Jose Ramirez. We just didn't want to pull the trigger. And so it's going to take a lot less to get that consistent pitching. So yeah, Kirk could be that moving piece with Moreno, uh, you know, hot
In
on
the
his
weeds.
heels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I struggle with Kirk. I've never been like a big Kirk believer. I know we're getting some comments here in the YouTube chat comparing Kirk to Rowdy Tellez. Kirk is the new Rowdy, people are saying.
Love that.
I kind of love that analogy too. But I just genuinely don't see a long term fit with Kirk on this team. I think the veteran role is securely Danny Jansen's. If he continues to hit the way he has been to start the year and through the last half of last year coming back from injury, for sure Danny Jansen is the catcher of our future. Even if Danny regresses and is back to less than appealing option as a hitter, I think just from he's solidified himself defensively and as a game caller that he has real value in that regard as a pitcher. Kirk 5 years behind him in terms of that development. So if we're just taking the young guy with the high upside bat, Moreno will be here by this time next year. Period. Right? Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah,
talking
at
about maybe
least.
Moreno
At
comes
least.
up in a month. I don't think
Could
he
be
comes up in
sooner.
a month, right? But like Moreno is nipping at Kirk's heels more than anybody else's.
Mhm.
So I think that is the role that is very precarious for Kirk. Needs to turn it around and needs to do it quickly. Otherwise,
One
Scott, it
thing I
looked like
do
you're getting
like,
ready to jump in here.
well, one thing I do love seeing is Danny Jansen on that bench, just helping Kirk every step of the way, helping Collins every step of the way, in big chats with his binder open with Heineman, going over all this stuff. Like, Danny knows this pitching staff inside and out, and it has taken him 5 years to get to this point, and I love watching him be a leader on the bench. I love watching him take this as his responsibility, and I think that this shows who the number one catcher on this team is who's going to lead this team to the promised land, and that man is Danny Jansen, in my opinion.
Yes, and look, last year we were talking about in the off season, I was really pushing the Jays to go after JT Realmuto as a veteran, very good hitter catcher, right? I thought that was the option. That we, needed some sort of a veteran catcher on this team. Danny's that veteran catcher already. And I think that he deserves the credit where credit is due. And like you've pointed it out there with his binder in the dugout and everything like that, that's exactly what you want to see from your catcher. I love seeing it. I think there's a lot of... Danny isn't going anywhere. As long as he stays healthy, he's on our team. He's not going to be a big dollars catcher, but as long as he wants to be here, he's going to have a role in Toronto. I'm very confident of that moving forward.
And 15 years down the line, you can see him moving into the managerial type aspect of the game and being, manager Danny Jansen. And to go on to the Kirk aspect, just to finish that off finally, was if you've got Danny as your number one catcher, right? And you're looking to fill in a backup catcher who can be the DH. That's exactly what, Kirk or Moreno? You've got two catchers to do it, right? Who do you have more faith in right now? Moreno, right?
Yep.
It's all three of us. It's Moreno. So Kirk becomes that piece that you can. You've got two catchers that you want. You have a lot of faith in two guys. So Kirk really does become that movable piece, which is heartbreaking because he's this beautiful little butterball of a guy that you just can't help but love when he's on fire. But what he could bring back to this team could be very, very helpful for that big postseason push.
What a great way to wrap that up.
All right.
Are we all ready to shit on umpiring?
I was just going to say, can we start shitting on umps?
Didn't bring my toilet paper.
It's really affected my Google search algorithm because I've just been searching up terrible umpire stats for the past week straight.
So this is the one I'm gonna just kind of.
You take the lead on this, Scott.
Right. So Jeff Nelson and his performance yesterday in that Oakland Blue Jays game was one of the worst performances by an umpire that I can remember in forever. I can't remember the last time that I was like, boy, it would sure be nice if Angel Hernandez was umping this game, right? Yeah. It was mind-blowing. So called strike accuracy was a 68% average. The average strike accuracy is 88%. He was 20% off the average accuracy rate. And of the 18 of the 56 called strikes that were true balls, 11 of those 18 went against the Jays. So 2/3. And I know that that's there's a lot to be said that that's just a roll of the dice, that's not necessarily any. We're not going to get into conspiracies or anything like that. However, at what point does Major League Baseball need to step in? Because this isn't one game. The umpiring has been atrocious across the league since day one. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what this is, if this is just a psychological thing with umpiring, right? That robo-umps are coming and they're like, who gives a fuck anymore? That might just be the most likely scenario. I know, Adam, jokingly, you said on Friday's cast, right? Is it possible that the umpires, or maybe we were texting, either way. You were like, maybe it's a conspiracy that the umpires were like, well, we'll just all... Major League Baseball approached the umpires and were like, "Okay, screw this up and then get fan support behind robo-umps. And then you all keep your jobs."
I mean, look, I don't know how real the conspiracy is that I threw out there.
No, I don't think it's real, but
I would like to point to the massive tonal shift in public perception towards robo-umps over the last 10 days.
Uh-huh.
Because we did interviews all off season with these sports broadcasters from Sportsnet, with different players, coaches, scouts, you name it. We were talking to them, and it was a pretty unanimous decision that nobody liked the idea of robo-umps, right? It being the devil's advocates that we like to play, it does feel inevitable. It felt inevitable all off season. But I think now, for the first time, you're really starting to see that, like, there's a public outcry at this point that, like, something's got to be done. This is unacceptable. And, yeah, like...
It's the consistency. Like, it's the consistency that's driving me nuts. It's
so much worse than last year and so much more often.
It's Ryu dropping a beautiful curveball in on the outside corner in the strike zone and getting it called a ball, and then watching a ball 6 inches off the plate strike out Lourdes Gurriel Jr. when the game is on the line. Like, if you're going to call strikes 6 inches off the plate, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. But if you're doing it across the board all game long, fine. Right? Like,
yeah,
fine.
I mean, that's the begrudging fine, but it's still trash. Like, these calls are too far off. We're not talking about like if a pitch misses the strike zone by less than the width of a baseball, maybe you can cut a guy some slack. But when it's like 2 or 3 baseballs outside and it's being called a strike, and it wasn't like a sweeping slider that it's like, well, did it catch the corner as it pulled the catcher all the way over here, right? Like, it's not that case. It's a straight piped fastball that never came close to the plate being called a strike, and it's unacceptable. Again, same thing with like curveballs and stuff at the bottom of the zone or the top of the zone. There is more room for interpretation there as far as like, what's the top of the strike zone? Where does the bottom of the strike zone start? Right? Like, there is some room for interpretation. I know according to the rules there isn't. It's pretty clearly defined. But the plate is the plate.
I know, and I wish I'd written it down, because I do wish to give credit where credit's due. But there was somebody on Blue Jays Twitter who tweeted out, "Can you imagine being so bad at your job that you get Charlie Montoyo upset for the first time in his entire life?" And like, I mean, it's a brilliant tweet, and it really does sum this up, because there is not a manager that I can think of that's more level-headed, more calm. He's not a guy who flies off the handle very often. I've never even seen him upset before. I've seen him wear passive-aggressive shirts, but I've never seen him actually, like, lose his mind. And he was straight up furious. I mean, he used the word that you used off the top, Adam, horse shit. This is fucking horse shit. And then he gets kicked out. And what I love, too, is he called it effing horse shit, and then he gets booted from the game. And then he was like, "Oh, you're going to kick me out for that? Well, now I'm really going to tell you what I think." Like,
you got to earn it. You got to earn it at that point.
Yeah.
I was going to say that it really does feel like you're taking the umpires are like, "Oh, you're going to take this away from us? Well, if this is the last time that we truly have any effect on the game, then we're going to have some effect on the game." This is literally if this is my last time umpiring this specific matchup, well, I want this team to win. Then, I have that power, and what are you going to do? Fire me? But the wild thing is that the hitters look completely baffled. I hate the pitches that start off the plate and go even more off the plate and get called, the point is that, like, last year I would come across a game that seemed terrible, and I'd make a TikTok video and I'm like, look at how terrible this is, but it's every game. Yeah. It's every game, and it's drastically bad. Can you bring that graph up one more time that you had brought up of that game?
Yeah.
So what was his percentage was, you said 68%
called strike accuracy.
68% called strike accuracy.
So
and normally it's 88%.
So he's botching 32 out of 100 pitches. Right? Like, out of 100 pitches
that's insane.
That's I can't even fathom that number.
That's like
how many
60 to 70 pitches a game he's botching.
Yes. In that game, he probably botched 60 pitches were botched. That is more effect on a game than any foreign substance or any individual cheating or anything to affect 60 individual pitches. is
And
astounding. I can't think of a bigger effect on a
And
game.
it affects more than just the pitches, too, right? Like, think about what a psychological game baseball is, and all these players that just need to be mentally tough and be able to just push things aside when stuff doesn't go their way. But if things are being called improperly 35% of the time, how do you just let stuff go? Like, you're constantly guessing. What?
Well, I was going to say, like, you can't argue with the umpires. The umpires are like the ultimate. They're like, you gave us one dream year to end it off with, right? You gave us, we can do whatever we want. You can't say a thing. It's
Yeah.
like that's what position they've been put in, and they're going to laugh their way, like, you're going to see that all season long. And one of the rules that Manfred put in place was that any change can be put into effect with a 45-day in advance. They give you 45 days in advance
Yeah.
to prepare for a rule change. And I said this from the very, very beginning. You may see robot umpires before they said after the 2023 season, you might
Yeah.
see it a hell of a lot sooner than that.
Especially if this carries on. And I know one number that really stood out. And listen, just so everybody knows, again, I am not a conspiracy theorist where they're out to get the Blue Jays. This isn't about the Blue Jays. However, yesterday's game that Jeff Nelson just absolutely crapped all over with his terrible performance. There's a stat called overall favor. And basically what they do is they take an equation, put all the numbers into it, and then they can kind of figure out how many runs, and normally it's about 0.5 runs is in favor of one team or another. That's about the averages. Is half a run is affected by the umpiring. But yesterday's game by Jeff Nelson, the runs were 1.41 in favor of Oakland, plus 1.41. Like, that is the highest differential and overall favor I've ever seen in baseball. It's insane.
Well, this is the last time that they like. I don't want to go and say that all umpires are dirty, terrible people all of a sudden, because that's honestly what it feels like we're saying here.
Mm-hmm.
But like, think about it from the concept of the way that betting has taken such a stronghold on society. It's like with a game like that, you go tell a friend, hey, I'm going to go do a 65% game here, and I'm going to put the underdog Oakland up against this team, and you bet big money here, and boom,
Yeah.
you make. I can shift the odds. I can shift the
Sure.
odds with the 75% game. I can absolutely shift the odds, and that scares me. It scares me
If
that
anyone questions it, I'm kicking them out of the game. You
yeah,
know, like,
and you can't say anything. It's they have given. It's like they're taking away the humanity of umpires, but the umpires have the power to do whatever the fuck they want this season, and you may see it for really really some really bad shit happen like that.
Hey, no swearing, Joel. That's horseshit.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We'll
I'm
get
curious,
demonetized,
Adam,
I'm sure.
because I know, we're all three of us are obviously pretty worked up about this. What's the YouTube comments looking like? Are most people like,
Yeah, most people think it's pretty bad. I think Connor says Jeff Nelson was the same umpire from the infamous 2015 ALDS game.
yeah,
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's hilarious. Um,
oh, by the way, happy birthday to Connor.
yeah, happy
He,
birthday to Connor. Good call.
yeah, he went to the game today. His boy Manoa put up a good showing for him. So happy birthday, Connor.
Another one here. So this one says, as long as the strike zone is consistent with both teams, I kind of like batters needing to adjust. I generally have that feeling, but it's been egregious lately. Like, this
When
strike
it's
zone has been double the size of the plate almost. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been really, really tough.
Well, I mean, you saw it yesterday. And I mean, this is unfair too because the technology is so fast and you just know instantly how wrong an umpire is. But I mean, you saw the Blue Jays gathered around the iPad in the dugout yesterday after that Lourdes Gurriel strikeout where he had two balls called strike that were somewhere between 3 to 6 inches off the plate. And literally, they were just like, what the hell?
It's
Like,
tough.
all of them were gathered around and they were watching it over, and all of them were just shaking their head like, how do you even combat that? How do you go up and put in a competitive at bat when you're getting strikes called that are so, like, especially with a guy like Lourdes who has spent so much time trying to shrink his strike zone, spent
Yes.
so much time not chasing balls off the plate, and now you're going to call balls 6 inches off the plate? Like,
Yeah, it's bad. Here's one thing that I don't like, and then we could talk about Charlie Montoyo and his reaction to this. I don't like that this is something that the team has to consider at that level. I don't like the idea of players in any sport, in any context, regardless of minor leagues, pro sports, anything. I don't like, as a general rule, blaming the officials or blaming the judges, or well, this was a bad
yeah,
judgment, or this was a bad score, it should have been a 10 out of 10 dive, or it should have been a whatever. Like, I mean, I used to watch the UFC when I was in college all the time. I'm too old to watch it now. It just hurts to watch. But it's like, knock the guy out, or don't complain about the judges having the decision go the other way, right? Like, just don't leave it up to the judges. I know you can't do that with baseball, but I really just, something is like a burr under my saddle watching a team actually get worked up about how bad the umps are. And I know it's not just the Blue Jays, and I know it's not just, the Jays aren't getting singled out because they're the Canadian team and we got to stop them from winning the World Series because it'll be bad for TV ratings. Like, I'm not a conspiracy guy like that. But I do worry about that, like, from a just general professionalism standpoint. I just want to see my guys go out there and do their
Yeah.
job, right?
The one thing I'm going to say to that though is like right now Jays are doing all right, right? 6-4, right? Record's good. We're in April. It's not like we're in October just befuddled by umpires in these incredibly important games where everything is down to the wire. We're doing this in April, and it's more just shocking. We're not
yeah,
we're not in a bad place because of it. The team is not like
Yeah, we're not 1 and
we
9.
could, yeah, right. Like, but it's still coming out of us. We still have made that drastic shift on like, hey, I'm going to miss framing, and I'm going to miss what a great framer would do to the strike zone.
yeah,
Now it's just like, geez, give me just a consistent strike zone, please.
yeah,
And we're 10 games into the season and we're begging for this.
yeah.
It seems weird where we are, when we are, and where the team is for us to be complaining so hard.
I agree 100%, Joel, and I'm with you, Adam, where I, even for myself as a fan, don't like to blame the umpiring or the referees or whatever. It just feels like such a cop out, and you expect the guys within a dugout or in the dressing room or whatever sport you're talking when it comes to officiating to just deal with what comes their way. But when it's this inconsistent, when
It's
it's
hard to
this,
ignore.
it's just almost impossible. But
I want to see one game where the umpire crew gets together, and that like the guy down at second base, or the whatever, some other umpire, right, comes in and goes, "What the hell are you doing? You get down to third. I'm taking over now. You're terrible. 65%. You're making us all look bad." Like, I want to see
yeah,
that in-game
right?
shit.
All right, let's talk Charlie flipping out, and then we'll move on. We still got a lot to talk about here, and with 30 minutes left, we got a lot to cover. So with Charlie flipping out, I loved it, and I hope we see more of it. If Charlie could take on like the grumpy dad role as well, like, then I'm gonna buy into Charlie Montoyo as like the
Yeah.
long-term manager of this team, especially because like when that was happening, when he was about to get tossed, I was nervous that like Pete Walker was gonna go out there and yell, and then we're gonna lose Pete Walker for the game, or Schneider was gonna go out there and yell, and we'd lose Schneider for the game. I was like, oh no! And then when Montoya went out, I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's not even a loss, right? So if he can just be like our emotional cheerleader, I shouldn't say that's not even a loss. That's too harsh for Charlie.
It is too
But
harsh, but yes,
I do
get
think
what
that
you're
should
saying.
be his role. Is like he should be the guy that's going out there getting ejected, and I love to see it. I don't know. I hope to see more of it.
And I think it really sent a message. Like, this isn't a manager that does this all the time, right? This isn't a scenario where you're like, oh, there goes Charlie flipping out again, right? And I mean, there is that aspect to it too. I mean, you see it in hockey all the time, right? Like, I'm a big Flames fan, and Daryl Sutter, everyone always says he's got an expiration date on him, because he does. You've got Daryl Sutter's a guy who he's He's old school. He's a dude who goes into the dressing room. He'll yell, he'll scream, he'll flip out, he'll do his thing. He's a hard ass. But that hard ass vibe only lasts for a few years. But to see Charlie flip out, I mean, I don't even think I've ever seen him not smile.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's the guy that should be flipping out. Like when they're looking at the iPad and watching the Gurriel at bat, and they see those 2 strikes that were so far off the plate, and then just is like, that's too far. Like this is that's what you want to see. I don't want to see Springer and Vlady going like, what is this joke of an ump back there, right? Like I want those guys just doing business, and I want Charlie being the guy who's like, bad call. 2 middle fingers as he walks off, and the crowd saluting him. Like that's what I want to see.
In defense to the Blue Jays who were gathered around the iPad there, which I did actually love. I don't normally like. I'm very much like you, Adam, that I don't like when teams let that sort of thing affect them emotionally and stuff when you're in game. But they were watching it because Charlie just got kicked out, and that was what Charlie was yelling. He's like, you were so far off. And so they're going back and looking at it. They're like, yeah, like Charlie's right. Like, this is ridiculous. Like,
all right. That's a good clarification.
And
Joel, do you have anything to add there?
Well, yeah, you take it to like old school managers like Earl Weavers or Lou Pinella's, Bobby Cox's. They knew when them going insane for their team would fire that, internal spark in the team. And Montoyo has yet to do it until now. And I think honestly, it should be like in the manager's handbook that you should probably get tossed like 4 times a year. Just for the sake of it, even if there's no reason for it, you should keep it 4 or 5 times. You should get tossed just to show the players on your roster that you'll go out there and you'll get checked for them. And like you said, I think the game plan with Snyder and Walker is well in hand if Montoya does get tossed. So the emotional cheerleader might be a little bit much, but like
I already regret the term, Joel.
No, but I love it. I love that you got to go and you got to fire them up because they can't do it. You can't lose the players. The players can't go. They can't say anything. So it's almost like a time where managers should get thrown out more. Because you're not losing anything on the field, and you can just go down the tunnel and say, "Pinch hit this guy." You can, you can still do your job.
Well, especially with today's day and age of analytics, it's not even really coming from him still, right? Yeah. So
I was just gonna say that he goes down to the tunnel and he's like, "Still follow the analytics."
Exactly right. Exactly. All right, so let's move on now. Let's talk depth pieces. We've got Zach Collins, we've got Tapia, and we've got Zimmer. Heineman, I'm done with. If I never see Heineman in a Jays uniform again, it'll be too soon. Is that too quick? Well, is that not a big enough sample size?
I think it has a lot to do with Collins being so on point too as well, right? He's there. 2 guys have come up, and one has made the other one look, far weaker than he does. So, I agree with you. I don't need to see Heineman. I don't need to see that throw, that pickoff play that went down the line ever again. But Collins has been really, really on point. So I think that's.
And they needed somebody to step up, and it was great to see him be that guy. I know that even when Jansen went down and we were doing the cast, we were getting all sorts of comments in Discord being like, I miss Reese McGuire. Something I never thought would be a sentiment amongst Jays fans. And Collins it's funny. Pretty much wiped that out pretty quick.
It's funny how important a first impression is because, look, Collins is hitting 375. He's come up with some pretty timely RBIs.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, you bet. Whereas on the other hand, Heineman did nothing in his first game except throwing into right field. And, that's enough for us to go like, okay, well, we're not worried about, we don't miss Reese McGuire anymore because we have Collins. And Collins can hit 200 for the next month. It'll only bring his average down to 250. And we'll still have that good first impression where we're like, Collins is
he
really
had
good.
A good enough game yesterday that they put him as DH for today.
Well, the real shame with Zach Collins is that Joey Murray hasn't become a household name yet because the nickname for Collins is Fat Joey Murray. Every time I see his face, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is like a computer generated version of Joey Murray where they just went wider with it. Like, they look like so much like brothers. All
Yeah.
right. The rest of the pieces, though, Tapia, Zimmer.
Here, listen, Tapia has been what he was advertised to be, right? Negative launch angle. He makes contact 85% of the time. In fact, I've been impressed. I'm like, yeah, he puts the bat on the ball every time. I mean, it's a ground out every time, but he is putting the ball in play. He's had a few big hits for this team. He's filled in admirably in the outfield. He's a fourth outfielder. What do you expect? Is he a better fourth outfielder than Randall Grichuk? No. I would prefer to see Randall Grichuk as the fill-in currently on this squad, but that's not the way it what do you do?
With Tapia, I was going to say that I really feel like Tapia is a project almost. Like they know that he's got this negative launch angle, but he's got good bat speed and he has great bat to ball skills. So I think that when you look at a guy like that, you just sit down and you say, listen, if you can get that launch angle up 10 degrees, 15 degrees, you can be a really, we can get a lot of production out of you. You have abilities. You just hit the ball down into the ground. It's like if you can just and we actually saw, I think, a couple of swings from him the other day where the ball was up in the air, and I was baffled by it.
Honestly, Joel, I love everything you're saying. If he was 26,
yes.
The fact he's 29, I'm having a harder time buying into this. That said, I hope you're right. Like I hope that they can fix his swing, right?
Yeah,
like,
I'm saying it's like you like the tools that he possesses as a fill-in player, but there's this potential that is yet to be attained with him. And Batista's a guy who found it late, but like
that's true.
But
so is Edwin. I mean, the
Jays
do have.
And if he never comes around to being
29-year-olds, yes.
Yeah, if he never comes around to being any type of launch angle type player ever, you missed out, but you've got some speed and you can plug him in positionally. But if you can just get that swing to level out and just pitch that ball up a little bit more, there is a viable baseball player there who can be productive.
I'm out on Tapia. He's broken a cardinal sin for me when it comes to baseball players. But before I even get to that, I want to just address his speed, because you mentioned he's got some quickness to him. I heard that he was a fast base runner too, and that was part of the trade, was that the Jays are looking to get faster and blah, blah, blah. I don't see it. Maybe he is faster, like if we actually clocked it, but it feels like the exact opposite of Kirk. I think, Joel, you mentioned it earlier, where it looks like he's just chugging along, but he's running in quicksand, right? Like he goes nowhere, but he's hustling as fast as he possibly can. He's got the cartoon circles under his legs. Yeah. Right? Tapia never looks like he's hustling out there. Like, he might be naturally fast, but he looks so lackadaisical out there. Like, he is just never in a rush, and it's so frustrating to watch, especially for a fourth outfielder, for a role guy who, like, we're talking about is on the bubble for a roster contraction at the end of the month. Like, I don't know. The deal breaker for me on Tapia was, I think it was in this Oakland series, where he hit a ground ball to first base, kind of up the mid, like they were playing the shift or whatever. And the first baseman kind of bobbled it, but they still got him out because he didn't leave the box with any sort of enthusiasm. Like, he hit it, realized that he grounded out, and then just kind of jogged it out.
Which has to be his thing. He has to jog out every ball.
That's what I'm saying, right? Is like, because the guy bobbled it, like, maybe he still would have been out, but it would have been close, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that you've got a guy who's like a fifth outfielder at this point, fourth outfielder is a generous term, and the fact that he's just like not giving every ounce that he has is unacceptable to me. If George Springer hits that same hit and wants to jog it out, and like, okay, we've got like load management and we don't want him getting injured or pulling up lame, for sure. Like, I'm fine with, as much as I love seeing George run out an easy out and hustle hard down the line. Love seeing it. It's understandable when he does it, but for a guy like Tapia, it's unacceptable. And I just so for that reason, like I'm over it. And then now that's entrenched in my mind, and I see it defensively too, where it's just again maybe he's faster than he looks, but he does not look like he is running hard out there. So
I completely agree with that point. Because with Springer, every time he's taking an extra base, or there was I think it was a play earlier on where there was um, a bobble throw at home, and he went and took third, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, oh, the Springer's running. Oh,
Yeah.
please don't take any extra steps that you don't need to. Oh.
Yeah.
But with Tapia, I figured that he would be the person that I would be happy to see crashing into walls. You're like, you're here to crash into walls.
Yeah.
You're here to literally die running. Every single running aspect of the game, you need to say, I'm a gazelle and look what I can do. And so, yeah, to go to that point, if you're not using what you were pretty much brought over here to do, and when you miss, when Teoscar goes down, I think we talked about this about 6 weeks ago. We were like, we're worried if we lose an outfielder because Randall is that pretty damn solid fill-in spot, and he's got the ability with he's inconsistent, but his inconsistent abilities still give you the 3-run homer that could win a game, right? Which left that left town, he strikes out a lot, but you know what? When he does hit it, he hits it 460 feet, and if there's 2 guys on, that makes a big difference. So like, it's hard to see that because he was a good fill-in piece that could win you ball games with that bat. And there was never a time where it didn't seem like Grichuk was running everything out, or Grichuk was making plays in the field where he gave it everything every time you saw him. So it seems to me that you're taking a player that, like you said, looks lackadaisical when you don't want him to be, for a player who was crashing and doing. Look at that play that Grichuk made over the wall in Colorado. It's one of the best catches of the year already. That guy's he brings the intensity.
How you feeling, Scott? You happy with him? You're just in agreement with us on Tapia? Should we move on to Zimmer?
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about Tapia. I don't like that listen, the truth is, we could all be wrong. He could be giving 100%, and he is so fast and so natural at that it looks like he's dogging it. But there's been a few plays where I'm like, you're not running this out. Like, what the hell is going on here? Whereas Bradley Zimmer, I think I give Zimmer more leeway because I know what his skill sets are, and he is showing those skill sets. And his bat's non-existent. He's a 29-year-old fourth outfielder who is still in the league because of his defensive prowess. Yeah. And that's exactly what he has showed. So when it comes to Tapia and you watch him, even if it's just a perception that he's dogging it, it's a little bit easier to dismiss it. It's a little bit easier to be like, okay, this guy's not the guy, right? Yeah. Whereas at least with Zimmer, even though he's sucking it at the plate, I'm not excited when I watch him come up to bat, but I have total confidence in him at center field. And I don't have total confidence in Tapia at center field.
No, I mean, like Zimmer isn't a flashy center fielder. I don't think anybody's going to confuse him for Kevin Pillar out there. But he's so good. Like, he's so good at center field defensively that when we have George Springer in center field and Zimmer enters the game, Springer moves over to right field.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's all you really need to know from a eyeball test of how good is Zimmer defensively. It's that you'd rather have him in center field than George Springer. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but whatever. Let's just take that at face value. Can we move on from the role players here?
If we're going to,
something else?
If we're going to give a score card out of 10 for the depth so far, I feel very comfortable saying it's a 7 out of 10. It's fine. They're passing. They're even a little bit ahead of that. They've done what they've had to do. You don't expect your fifth outfielder in Bradley Zimmer to step up when he's in those situations and tear the cover off the ball and and be an everyday guy. Like, that's not why they're there. But it does rub me the wrong way, and we brought this up, and we can drop it at that. But yeah, like what feels like a lack of effort from Tapia, sometimes it just rubs me the wrong way. As for Zach Collins has been incredible. And I know a super small sample size. He's obviously still just a role guy. He's a depth guy, and you got to take everything that those guys give you and just fist pump when they give you anything. But, I mean, he's been great.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think 7 out of 10 is pretty accurate. Maybe it's a 7 that feels like a 4 because we've had to rely on it so much. Like, I think that's been the only like real downside here to our depth, is that we've had to even have such a thorough look at the depth already.
So early on, yes.
So early on, right? But yeah, I mean, we've had 3 depth pieces take significant roles so far with Zimmer, Collins, and Tapia, and one of them has panned out better than you could imagine. So yeah, as far as depth goes, I think that's a pretty good case scenario.
Our depth third baseman has become our second baseman.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Should we, before we wrap this up, we're going to talk Romano and Vlady?
Yes. So this is a little race that I threw out here a couple days ago. And now the more that it's kind of like, it feels like this might be a thing all year long, but
I love it too.
What's the bigger number this year? Vlady home runs or Jordan Romano saves?
Could they both go 50? Like,
could they both go 50?
I'm getting insane here, but
look, but it's not that insane. I think both guys have a shot at 40. Pretty, like, I mean, barring bad tacos, 40 isn't out of the question for either guy. And I mean, you need a little bit of luck on either side of that to go to 50, right? And
we are 10 games into the season. Jordan Romano just
took the lead in this race.
Just put that 6th save right into his
MLB leading 6th save.
How many wins do we project the Jays to have? Because technically, at this pace, Romano's going to save every single one of them.
He's on pace for 100 saves. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. I know, when I was saying my early season predictions that Romano is really cements himself as an elite closer this year. I think the thumbnail I had was like 50 saves ? And the blowback on that was like, wow, the Jays are going to be in too many blowouts for him to get saves, right? But like so far that doesn't seem to be the case, and I still think 50 is a stretch.
Yes, like, obviously.
If he hits 40 or 45, I'm not going to be shocked by that. So
I mean, 50 home runs is a stretch.
Yes.
But here we are 10 games into the year, and Vladdy's at 5. I mean,
yeah.
I feel Vlady will. I was on the over group for the Vlady hitting 50. I may have been on the over group for 60. That's getting ridiculous. But the thing with Vlady is that like I just like to look at his dad. I like to look at his dad. And when his dad went from 22, his dad came to the league a year later. Okay. And at 21, his dad had a 400 OPS in a cup of coffee worth of time in the majors. So Vlady was having a 780 OPS when he was 20. So he was ahead of the pace of his dad. But when his dad went from 22 to 23, he added 150 OPS points. And I figure if Vlady Senior never made physical changes to his body. He was just this lean kind of beanpole of a guy his entire career. And Vlady Jr. is physically changing his body. And I feel like you talk about the speed, talk about the way that his body has reconfigured itself over the weight that he has lost, but the weight that he has added for muscle. Like the 5 home runs that we have seen from Vlady this season are the longest of his career, 3 in one game, 2 against Garrett Cole, and the longest opposite field home run of his career. Those are his 5. They've all been insane. Like the movie has been, he says that this is the movie. It's been worth it. It's been worth the price of admission for those 5 home runs. So I feel like that is 50 for him. Healthy is no problem.
It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no problem. And for Romano, the fact that this team now seems to be in more games, in those tighter games, that bodes really well for his save opportunities.
Mhm.
And you haven't seen anybody as consistent as him. Josh Hader, it's like he's moving into that
Upper
Liam
echelon.
Hendricks,
Yeah, this is what I'm
Josh
saying.
Hader argument,
Yes.
right? Like he really is. And so I see that this being an amazing matchup all season long, barring anything scary.
And we're going to follow it all season long now. And
Yeah.
before we say our goodbyes, I did wish to just once again give a little toot here, to Tim Meza and Jimmy Garcia, I should say, who have been, both of them have been phenomenal. I know, I think it was Connor on Twitter, we already wished him a happy birthday, but he mentioned, he tweeted at us and he was just like, boy, Jimmy Garcia gave me Rafael Dolis kind of flashbacks there to early last year, where we were constantly Dolis would go in there and he'd bend, but he wouldn't break. Eventually, Dolis did break, but that was yesterday to a T, where Garcia comes in and he wound up with the bases loaded, but he didn't wind up allowing a run. And hey, if the bullpen can continue to perform like this team is going to be looking pretty good come the end of the season, because if you can eliminate, I think the starting rotation is just going to gel and fall into place, and we're going to figure it out, even if it does wind up being Ross Stripling as the 5th starter, or however this all plays out, whether they need to go and bolster this rotation at the trade deadline. I think if the bullpen can continue to be a strong point for this organization, it only bodes well for this team to be a playoff team and to go deep into the playoffs.
I totally agree.
Couldn't agree more. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to episode 12 of The Long Toss. We do this every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube, and then it re-releases Monday morning as well. Just one last question here from the YouTube live chat before we go. Could Romano even be in the running for a Cy Young if he keeps this up?
Well, the last reliever to win a Cy Young was Canadian Eric Gagne. He saved 80 games. So it would need to be
consecutively.
Absurd.
Consecutively. It would need to be absurd. It would need to be MLB record-breaking. Relievers don't win Cy Youngs.
It's happened 4 times in the last 35
sample.
years. It's almost a never. Good question. It's a fun thought, but we're certainly going to keep an eye on this Vlady Romano race, and we'll see if this gains traction on with some other outlets as well. If you're new here, please like, comment, subscribe. We are edging ever closer to 3,000 subscribers here on YouTube. I think 2,975 subscribers. So if we could push closer to 3,000, that would be cool. Big milestone there. Yeah, that's all I got for today. Scott, you just recorded your first stand-up comedy album.
Yes.
I was there. Joel was there.
Joel was there, and I appreciated
hilarious.
you boys being there. Yeah, so it's going to be called Staying Together for the Cat, and its tentative release date is September. So we'll for sure be plugging that when that happens. So all of you who are like, hey, can I get it? Yeah, I'll annoy you enough. That
you'll hear about it during the playoff
you'll hear
run.
about
it. Yeah. All right. Joel,
well, just to add to that, I had never seen Scott do comedy before, and I was like, obviously we're all friends, and it's going to seem like I'm just promoting him. No, this guy is. You don't know how funny Scott is. And Scott is incredibly funny. I was in hysterics for the entire time. There was never a point where I wasn't laughing my ass off, and that's not just because you're my friend and I'm saying nice things. It's 100% true. You guys do not get to see that side of Scott. So when this album comes out, you are going to be just shocked at the stuff that comes out of his mouth and how funny it is.
Thanks, Joel.
It was
I really
absolutely
appreciate that,
sensational.
man. Thank you.
No
All
problem.
right.
You,
Well,
it was
Joel,
amazing.
thanks for promoting Scott. Do you want to promote yourself and what you're up to right now?
You just, good old Hey Kami on TikTok. All sorts of baseball stuff. It's fun when Vlady hits three in a game against Garrett Cole. That was actually the 1 year anniversary of my page.
Oh,
Uh,
there you go.
and it's funny because like my entire page kind of started around Garrett Cole using foreign substance
Yeah,
against the Blue
yeah.
Jays literally last year, and now a year later, how things have changed. So that was amazing, especially to watch that happen. I could never think in a million years that pretty much on the 1 year anniversary that Vladdy would just go and destroy New York, and and the movie is it's not shooting because it's Easter right now in the United States.
Right.
They pick up shooting again on the 21st, and then they will 3 scenes left, and then they're wrapped, and we'll get to see some stuff.
So close, eh? It's getting
Yeah.
so close.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, it's just
Very
chomping
cool.
away a little bit every single week. It gets closer and closer.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, goodbye again for the final time. We'll catch both of you again next Sunday. I know we got to set up a date to get together to record our Moneyball review, so I'm looking forward to that. And in the meantime, enjoy the 1 day off for the Blue Jays tomorrow. And then into the meat grinder we go. So Red
Yes.
Sox, Astros, more Red Sox, and more Astros, followed
Yankees.
by
Yeah.
Yankees for a breather. So, all right.
Postseason baseball in April. It's going to be
Yeah,
amazing.
it'll be a grind. All right. Thanks again, everybody in the YouTube for watching and commenting. Everybody listening on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you might get your podcasts. Thanks so much for supporting the show, and we'll catch you on a later date. Cheers.
Cheers, gang.